Folks, thank you very much for being here. This is a little bit of a test run for the live stream we're going to do on Inauguration Day, where we'll cover it from about 6 a.m. when my radio show starts in Huntsville until the inauguration ends. That's 2 radio shows, and we'll do some other stuff on there as well as having some giveaways to get into too. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that are being said right now about one United States Senator Tommy Tuberville. And it's a little ridiculous, but our friends at AL.com, which, as I note in the subject here, is basically the last remaining pieces of Alabama's legacy media. The stuff they're saying there at AL.com about Tommy Tuberville, the United States Senator from Alabama, is a little bit weird because they're all saying the exact same things. These are the last 4 opinion pieces that have been posted on AL.com as of this very moment, which is Saturday around 3 o'clock Central Standard Time. And I want to share this with you because I think it's interesting to note how, in order to continue their pathological silliness towards guys like Tommy Tuberville and Donald Trump, it requires them not understanding what is being said by these individuals. So I want to start by playing a clip of Tommy Tuberville on an interview on Newsmax talking about the LA fire and whether or not we should be dumping a ton of money into LA and California in order to bail them out. Listen to the words and let's talk about how they cover it.
Why should other states be bailing out California for choosing the wrong people to run their state?
We shouldn't be. They got 40 million people in that state, and they voting these imbeciles in office. And they continue to do it. And it's just a very small part of them in that state that's doing it. If you go to California, you run into a lot of Republicans, a lot of good people, and I hate it for them. But they are just overwhelmed by these inner city woke policies with the people that vote for them. I don't mind sending them some money, but unless they show that they're going to change their ways and get back to building dams and storing water, doing the maintenance with the brush and the trees and everything that everybody else does in the country, and they refuse to do it, they don't deserve anything, to be honest with you, unless they show us they're going to make some changes, Chris.
Okay, so Tommy Tuberville laying out that they will get some money, but maybe they shouldn't get all the money in the world and a blank check without us looking at what they've done here and how they can make it better and stop it. It's a completely reasonable thing. Everyone looks at that and says, okay, well, that seems completely reasonable. Oh, why in the world would anyone object to that? Well, there are a lot of people that have objected to that. A lot of people. Let's start here. J.D. Crow, because he's obsessed with DEI and he can't understand it, he has a cartoon here at AL.com of Tommy Tuberville. Let's get one of their ads up here. That's delightful. That off here, get some Xfinity or something. Tommy Tuberville, DEI hire, dumb, embarrassing, ignoramus. And of course, he goes into, and this is all they can do here. And keep in mind, J.D. Crow is not a very good cartoonist, so what he has to do is basically spell out everything as blatantly as he possibly can. It's kind of embarrassing, but this is what he does. So you scroll through here to see what he's talking about, and as you can see, he's making it clear that Tommy Tuberville says, we're not going to give any money to them unless they change their ways, which, of course, is not what he's saying. They continue, AL.com wants your money. They lay out a little bit of what Tommy Tuberville says. And then you have the response by some people who ask, really? Really? And then they quote Jon Stewart here, who also got this wrong. But because Jon Stewart got it wrong, they're all following suit here. So next time you get hit by an effing hurricane, why don't we have a little parent-teacher conference to see if you can get your scores up? Would you like to get money? Or actually, let's not do that because you'll get the money anyway because we're not effing psychos. That is psychotic. There's something wrong with you. Well, what you're saying is psychotic. It's also untrue. It's not a very fair way to look at what Tuberville is saying. And you could talk about education scores and things like that. Alabama definitely has its problems, but they didn't lead to wildfires. Tuberville, I think, has made it very clear his statement is solely about the wildfires. And that's what he wants them to change. He's not asking them to change their way of living. He's asking them to do what they need to do to prevent what we're having to give them a bunch of money to do. An effing hurricane, as Jon Stewart America's conscience would have you believe, is not something that we caused, a hurricane. Now, don't think for a second that there aren't people that go on social media, these aren't real human beings, and talk about how it's our fault because we haven't done enough to address climate change and things of that nature. But that's neither here nor there at this point. Let's move on to the next one. Roy S. Johnson, another AL.com all-star, who I asked to come on my show recently. Another Xfinity ad. I'm sure they're making a ton of money. Roy S. Johnson came on the program, or tried to get him to come on my radio program, to discuss a silly thing he was saying about sundown towns. He couldn't defend it, so he didn't want to do that. But here he is again. Tuberville's California callous relief stance betrays all Americans. I mean, people cannot just make their argument. They have to mislead, and he gets into the same thing. I breathed for a bit before deciding how to respond to Senator Tommy Tuberville's latest buffoonery. Sure you did. You responded the same way everyone that works at your entity responded. You each wrote a column about it, crying about it, and misunderstanding it. So he's been called Tubby. Now he's being called Tubbs. He said, just Tubbs being Tubbs. I typically say to myself, what's the underbelly of word salad? Alabama senior United States Senator spews words chum, blood red bait for the not so great white sharks. Because he's white. It's racism or something. See, again, he's their black writer. That's what he writes about, black guy stuff. So it's got to be racism somehow. I don't know how it is, but he can't ignore it anymore. He has to come and talk about it because this is insanely inhumane, insanely unchristian, insanely un-American. You're going to notice his theme here. Well, the people that support all sorts of ungodliness and degeneracy all of a sudden start referencing religion on a regular basis in order to smear the people they dislike. So he says, Tubbs again, conquered the trifecta, and that would be the inhumane, unchristian, un-American. Conquered the trifecta on Monday when he said the crestfallen victims of California's devastating wildfires, those who lost their homes and their businesses, survivors of those who lost their lives, don't deserve federal relief because their state's voters generally elect Democrats as their public officials. First off, that's not what he said. He did not talk about the survivors of these. He's not talking about the individuals. He's talking about the state. He's talking about the problem the state has. He's not talking about an individual homeowner filling up reservoirs, building dams, and having the plans in place to fight wildfires. He's not talking about individuals. He is not doing that. In fact, one of the refrains on the right, remember this, is we're sending all this money to Ukraine, but we're not giving money to people who are affected by these things. He's talking about the leadership, the state, the city, the county. That's what he's talking about. And we all know that. But again, here we are misleading people. Lying would be the right word. Okay, that's the right word. He's lying about what Tuberville is saying. He goes on and says, even fellow Alabamian Senator Katie Britt was moved to a rare break from her party buddy, or buddies, I should say, since some congressional Republicans agreed that conditions should be placed on federal aid to California fire victims. Again, this is not saying if you want money and you live there, we're not going to give it to you unless there's conditions. They're talking about the bill. And again, it's all about misleading people. They're talking about the bills and how they're going to put them forward and what changes are going to be made in California before they approve them. This is not hard. This is not hard. And Katie Britt says, I think what we need to be doing right now is standing firmly with the people of California. And again, I don't have any problem with that. Letting them know that they have our prayers, they have our support, that we stand ready to be thoughtful about ways we can help, and making sure they have the resources they need. Tuberville said nothing different than that. He said, I want them to very clearly change their philosophies so we can get in a situation where these things aren't happening anymore. We'll get to all of that here in a little bit. As we scroll through, the conclusion is about as dumb as you would expect. We do not weaponize nor do we politicize aid to our fellow Americans when a disaster yanks lives, livelihoods, and all they've known from beneath their feet, whether washed away by flood, by flood or hurricane, or reduced to ashes by fire. And I look at that, and I'm assuming they meant flood, but it says food, because AL.com is terrible at what they do, and copy editing is just too hard. And if you look, since just to prove to the people who are watching. Right underneath there, you'll see the racial side of this. Roy Johnson, we went to Coleman and we stayed after sundown. He's saying basically the town is a racist town, but he went there as a black guy and they didn't kill him. So congratulations for him on that one, but he's trying to make that an angle of this as well. So he wants to make it clear that we should just give them money and nobody ever question what they've done, which is what Tuberville is actually saying. So now we get John Archibald. Now, John Archibald's an interesting case. He is the Pulitzer Prize winner of AL.com. I think there's two of them now, Kyle Whitmire, who we'll get to here in a second. No, he actually is not involved in this. He's too busy in Washington, D.C., living in his wife's basement. But Archibald is one of these guys who's a Southerner who says y'all all the time and talks about his preacher father, well, talking about all the things his preacher father believed being dumb and stupid, with the exception of give people stuff and government money, because apparently that's one of the things his father was big on, according to the way Tuberville frames things. But he says y'all a lot, so he's one of us. Archibald's words are these: Tommy Tuberville's blunder of biblical proportions. So we're back to Bible thumping John Archibald, who also will tell you shouldn't thump the Bible because it's wrong, and you shouldn't judge people in any way, shape, or form, not even for their decisions that they make. So Archibald starts off his column. Again, this is the third column in a row, and the last four things written at AL.com on their opinions page are criticisms of Tommy Tuberville for the same statement and other statements, but this particular statement where they are intentionally misstating and misunderstanding what he said because they're dumb. But they're not that dumb. They are doing this intentionally. He writes this: a man was going down, and it starts with a lie, so it's good. It's good that this starts with a lie. He'd call it like a story or an allegory, but it's a lie. A man was going down from Eli's Jerusalem Grill in Birmingham to Jericho in Perry County, a quiet place nestled between three cemeteries, 4 Baptist churches, 1 Methodist, and an old AME Zion church. The man was attacked somewhere between the Bethel Baptist Church, the New Antioch Baptist Church. By the way, you see, get the thing here? All of this is biblical, and there's a bunch of churches around. I wonder what's going to happen. I wonder if the church people aren't going to live up to the standard that John Archibald wants them to live up to so he can criticize them. Anyway, the man was attacked somewhere between the Bethel Baptist Church and the New Antioch Baptist Church. He was roughed up a bit, robbed of his worldly possessions. He was left there like his 2022 Prius hybrid, stripped and immobile on the side of the road. They're in a hybrid as well. Now, a preacher at a faraway church happened to be driving along the road on the way to Montgomery to deliver the opening prayer for the meeting of the Alabama Public Service Commission, which is a big opportunity for Alabama preachers, akin to the invitation to the Grand Ole Opry for country musicians. There's an obsession here with the Public Service Commission in the Alabama media. I don't understand it. I don't think Archibald does, but I think this is what he thinks he's supposed to be doing, is kind of mixing that in as a way to ding the individuals on the Alabama Public Service Commission, and that's what he's going to do here. He said, the good reverend, and this is a religious man, saw the man on the side of the road, but did not ask, what would Jesus do? No, because he's a hypocrite, because he's a man of God. In Archibald's world, all men of God are hypocrites, except his dad, who I'm sure is super proud of him. He said, what would Jesus do? Nope. He saw a Prius and thought, what would PSC boss Twinkle Kavanaugh do? The head of the Public Service Commission. And he stepped on the gas because Twinkle Kavanaugh, one of those mean Republicans. So that mean old Republican probably would step on the gas and maybe run the person over. And wouldn't you know, in this lovely story Archibald has crafted in his own mind about the people he hates, he writes this: it happened that a certain Alabama politician was also being driven along the road that day. On his way to Florida, his preferred state of mind and body, his driver spotted the man and his troubles and the Prius and the bumper sticker on the back that said coexist with a peace sign and the symbols of various religions. And he asked, should we stop? Guess who was in the back? What's he saying? Ugh, the senator said, I hate it for him, but he's just overwhelmed with these woke ideas. He doesn't deserve help, to be honest with you, unless he shows he's going to make some changes. So the guy being robbed on the side of the road is the same as the victim in a wildfire. So the senator sped on. Don't worry. Somebody stopped to help the guy out, maybe even drove an hour and a half to get to the nearest hospital. A dig on Alabama because hospitals have closed. Why have hospitals closed? The Wall Street won't tell you, but the Medicare reimbursement rate is being lowered and lowered and lowered and not being enough to keep them open. That has closed the hospitals. But no, expand these systems. Yeah, do this. Medicaid, expand these systems. That will solve it. That will solve it. Brilliant stuff here. A neighbor, maybe she was a Republican, maybe she was a Democrat. Maybe somebody who couldn't vote because of a criminal record or immigration status, or because they were so busy trying to survive that they didn't think much about it. The people who know what it's like to need some help often seem the most likely to give it. That's why Senator Tommy Tuberville's glee to deny aid to Californians in flames hit so hard and felt so strange and disturbing. As we've reached a point of no return. As if we have gone off the rails of humanity and can't get back on track. This guy, what a pompous ass. Again, you're bad if you don't do what I want and agree with my politics at all time. At all times. If you're not doing it, you're the bad guy. Tuberville said on Newsmax last week that we shouldn't supply aid to California, a state that puts imbeciles in office, not without conditions anyway. But that's not what Tuberville said. What did Tuberville actually say? He said we should give them some money, but we shouldn't give them everything they want unless they're going to change their ways. That's what he actually said. Do we get that explanation? No, of course not. Of course we don't get that explanation. They don't deserve anything, to be honest with you, unless they show us they're going to make some changes. And again, that's not the entirety of the comment. There's a lot more to that comment than what he's just saying. I mean, just play the clip.
Why should other states be bailing out California for choosing the wrong people to run their state?
We shouldn't be. They got 40 million people in that state, and they're voting these imbeciles in office, and they continue to do it. And it's just a very small part of them in that state that's doing it. If you go to California, you run into a lot of Republicans, a lot of good people, and I hate it for them. But they are just overwhelmed by these inner city woke policies with the people that vote for them. And I don't mind sending them some money, but unless they show that they're going to change their ways and get back to building dams and storing water, doing the maintenance with the brush and the trees and everything that everybody else does in the country, and they refuse to do it, they don't deserve anything, to be honest with you. Unless
we're going to send them money. Going to do that. He makes that clear, but does that get explained? No. They don't talk about it. Instead, they call him an imbecile. I could talk about imbeciles. I could talk about Tuberville's tenuous claim on facts or basic knowledge of government or his own religiosity, which you've done. You've criticized him on religion 15 times in this. Exactly what you've done. I could talk about how California pays a much bigger chunk of taxes to the government than Alabama, and how the federal government spends more per Alabamian than it does for Californians. And whose fault is that? It's the people that go up there and demand the government do absolutely everything. That's the people that do that. I don't understand this criticism. It also factors in defense spending, which Alabama has military bases, but it pretends that that's like some sort of welfare, which is not what it is. What Archibald can't do is talk about the actual facts of this situation because he doesn't actually care. He's just the third of 4 different columnists that have written the exact same column. Isn't Tommy Tuberville bad? That's the extent of the entire column. That's all it's supposed to mean. That's all it's about. That's all they can talk about. And it's the only thing they ever want to do. And that's just bash whatever Republican exists. Now, there was another one, and this one was written a little before all of this started. This was written by Joseph Goodman. Now, Joseph Goodman is another one of these guys who's going to tell you, hey, we should be nice to each other. We should do more for each other. We should go out and do everything we possibly can to help each other and be good to each other and be nice to each other. He also told someone to run into traffic for disagreeing with him and kill themselves. But, you can do that if you work at AL.com. Now, he asks if Tommy Tuberville is getting what he deserves. And keep in mind, this was written before the latest spate of all of these other columns. It was just the first one. His column's premise is that Tommy Tuberville is up for the Alabama Hall of Fame, or excuse me, the College Football Hall of Fame, and he didn't get in with Nick Saban, and I believe Urban Meyer was the other one who got in. So here are the criticisms Joseph Goodman is going to offer. First, it's no secret that people cringe when Senator Tommy Tuberville enters a chat. And there's something I'm noticing here. This guy's going to use a lot of like hip, I'm cool on the internet guy stuff. But this is like one of the most, and again, there's a lot of them at AL.com, one of the most disliked guys there. Go read the social media stuff, and they're all like, why don't you shut your face? I mean, which is probably good advice. So he continues, and again, someone there has a thesaurus, obviously. His latest belching bellicosity about people in Los Angeles is a perfect example because Californians voted for Democrats, says Tubbs, and then those affected by wildfires should suffer and receive no help from the federal government. Gross, right? Yeah, that would be pretty fucking gross if that's what he said, but it's not. We're immediately 2 sentences into this, and the guy's lying about what's being said. He didn't say any of that. He didn't even imply that. In fact, I played it for you twice where he says, hey, we should give them something, but they should change the way they're running their government because when it comes to wildfires, they're making it worse. He goes on to say, but it's always shock jock style rhetoric from the representative of Alabama. Why does he do it? Some people get off on that kind of thing, apparently. Gotta wonder, though. Is Tuberville's nasty brand of politics the thing that keeps him out of the College Football Hall of Fame? Nobody wondered that. Nobody thought that. I didn't even know that had happened. It's clearly not a big deal, but that's what he suggests. He says Tuberville was on the ballot along with Nick Saban and Urban Meyer. Saban and Meyer voted in. Tubbs was not. Fair? Not really. So he's going to make the argument that Tommy Tuberville should be in the College Football Hall of Fame, but he's only doing that in order to tear him down about other things that he has said. He goes into all this other stuff, how Saban had a losing record against Tuberville, how so did Meyer. No one else has ever done that. How Tuberville's success at Auburn brought Nick Saban in. All this stuff has been said 1,000 times. He continues after all the college football stuff to get right back into the other things. I want you to listen to this. As for his love of controversy, Tubbs has always had a habit of saying and doing questionable things. When he was at Ole Miss, he famously proclaimed that he wasn't leaving Oxford unless it was in a pine box. A week later, he decamped for Lee County, Alabama, which, by the way, Nick Saban did the exact same thing. He stood up and said, I'm not leaving the Miami Dolphins, and then he was at Alabama like a week later. So give me a break. Give me a break. That's college football. Do I agree with do I agree with Tubbs' disgusting form of statecraft? Obviously, no. Well, no kidding, because you're a beta. And that, of course, you at AL.com, no one there agrees with Tuberville. You work at AL.com. There's not a single person there that remotely agrees with anything Tommy Tuberville says. And if it wasn't this, it would be the next thing he says. You shouldn't have to lie about what he says, though. That's my problem with this. Each and every one of these individuals is lying about what Tuberville actually said in order to write an article. Obviously, no. I am big enough to look past that and advocate for him, Goodman writes. To be in the College Football Hall of Fame, yeah, that's what should happen. I'm big enough to look past it for him to be in the College Football Hall of Fame. Despite his current brand of ugliness, Tubbs should be in the Hall of Fame because he was a Hall of Fame-worthy coach. I'll leave that up to the sports guy to figure out because I don't know. Tuberville finished. I don't think he knows either. Tuberville finished his career. They run into this. I don't care about the college football stuff here. I don't. I'm more concerned about all this other stuff that he's doing now. He continues. On top of all those things, Tuberville also helped get the Confederate flags removed from Ole Miss football games. It's unbelievable now, but it's all completely true. Well, Tuberville was recruiting there. That's number one. And two, it was causing a problem. He didn't want that problem. And there's a difference from removing the Confederate flag from football games or from above state capitals and things like that and hating the people that have reverence for the Confederate flag who are not racist monsters. Okay, those people exist. And I think it's where Tommy Tuberville would land in a conversation with him if you would ever try to have such a conversation. But I don't think you could have that conversation because you're just not that smart. Please don't tell me to run into traffic. The shock jock senator, which as a shock jock, I find this to be offensive. The shock jock senator who wouldn't exist without the people he loathes. Listen to that sentence here. Again, do you notice a theme here? it's always the same thing. Everyone is conniving. Everyone is sneaky. Everyone is out there doing things in a disingenuous way. Why? Because that's how these people operate. And they're projecting that onto other people. The shock jock senator who wouldn't exist without the people he loathes once went to war against the Confederate flag while he was a coach at Ole Miss. Amazingly, he won. Tubbs should probably be in the Hall of Fame just based on that fact alone. Seems to me that you are very happy that he did that, and you think that's had a huge impact on the world. You would ask this guy, hey, are we more racist today than we were back then? They would say yes. And it's stupid, but that's exactly what this person would say, because he's stupid. So now we continue. But in order to get elected, Tuberville spit on his legacy of inclusion and diversity. Holy cow. And embraced a culture of hate. Love him or laugh at him, Tuberville has always been a rank opportunist. But is Tuberville too embarrassing to be in the College Football Hall of Fame? Alongside Saban, the answer is yes. And I suspect that Saban's inclusion in this latest class ultimately the reason why Tuberville was left off. No one wants Tuberville around these days. Just like Saban was, so you're telling me that Saban said, don't vote for Tuberville. Don't do that because I don't want him around me when I'm put in. It's just incredible stuff here. Just making stuff up here in like the silliest possible way. So he continues. Is Tuberville getting what he deserves? Maybe, but there's still hope for the senator of stupidity. I have a feeling that Tuberville isn't finished writing his legacy when it comes to college football. And here's a scary thought. Having all-ins could determine the future of the sport that set him up for life. A couple of weeks ago, there was a grassroots movement among college football coaches. They all started agreeing that Saban should be the commissioner of college football. Never mind that a commissioner of college football cannot exist based on the sport's current structure. And never mind that Saban doesn't even want that job. It's a bad job. Saban shouldn't take it. Saban should stay on College Game Day. Simple to say. College football is so broken, the coaches of the game want someone to regulate everything like a dictator. What's the answer for this broken sport? College football needs fixing at the federal level. So think about this Inauguration Day. Think about this on Inauguration Day. If anyone is in the position to be a future government-appointed czar of college football, then it's Senator Tuberville. How does that make you feel? Probably about like eating raw chicken. These people are just ridiculous. When it comes to college football in Tubbs, it just hopes the whole thing doesn't catch on fire. I don't know what that means. So let's break down this brilliant literary thought here. How does that make you feel? Probably about like eating raw chicken. When it comes to college football in Tubbs, let's just hope the whole thing doesn't catch on fire. Is there an editor at AL.com? Is there something about eating raw chicken that makes you catch on fire? Is there something there? Is there something I don't know? Is there anything that I don't know? So these guys, again, 4 different guys writing basically the same column for the same entity over the span of 24 hours. And think about that. This was written at 7 a.m. yesterday. And then you go to Archibald's column, and that was written, at 7 a.m. yesterday. And Roy Johnson's column was written that was this morning at 6:30 a.m. And let's see, J.D. Crow's stupid cartoon. This thing came out. When did this come out? This came out at 8 o'clock. Yes, I should have done this yesterday. They had 3 within an hour. The 4th one came 24 hours later. Listen to these people. They're out of their damn minds. They just hate the people they disagree with politically, and they'll do anything to get there. Now, I would also like to point something out that Tuberville is right about what he's saying here. Tuberville is correct when he talks about how California has screwed this up and elected imbeciles. And we should ask that maybe they not just get a blank check to solve all their issues. No one's talking about the individual people. That is a misinterpretation, a willful one. Willful misinterpretation. And by the way, it's journalistic malfeasance. Okay? The way they do this is intentionally lie about what's being said and then go out and pretend that they've got the solutions here. We should just do something about Tommy Tuberville. If we could just stop Tommy Tuberville from doing these things, everything would be fine. Because Tommy Tuberville's wrong on everything. And he says people shouldn't get any money if they live in California, which is not what he said. But I want to go a little step further than that. Let's look at Bill Maher for a second. Bill Maher what is it? I forget what that show's called, but excuse me. Bill Maher, of all people, points out that not only is Tuberville right, but Trump's right. Trump's been right about this stuff. And dismissing these guys solely because you don't like them right now because of their politics is I guess, Goodman's reason for Tuberville not getting into the Hall of Fame. It's also a reason why they don't want to do anything they say. If they say something, you have to go the other way. That's the position. Bill Maher says, maybe that's not a good idea. And he's right.
Remember when we had a fire when Trump was president and he came in and he said, you don't rake. You're not raking. And we all did jokes about it. But, we got to get over this thing. Is he wrong usually? Yeah. But I'm not going to, I remember when he took ivermectin or something, and then ivermectin, which won the Nobel Prize.
Right.
And nobody, it was like, that became snake oil? No. Yeah. Just because Trump says it doesn't mean it's automatically wrong.
Automatically
Did he have a point about that we don't?
Of course he did.
Okay.
Of course he did. And that is, I think, a pretty fair way of looking at it. You don't have to dismiss everything these guys say just because you don't like them. And unfortunately, that's exactly what's happened in our modern American media. Anything Tommy Tuberville says, oh, he's a big dum-dum. Anything Trump says, oh, he's a big dum-dum. These guys are incapable of getting beyond that point. That is the only thing they can possibly think about. It is the only thing they can possibly believe. It has to be done their way, 100% their way. And if anyone disagrees with that kind of stuff, well, then it's just the end of the road and it's the end of the world. And I think that's a stupid way of looking at American politics. It is possible for someone to be a terrible person and be right about this. I'm not saying either of these guys are terrible people, but Tommy Tuberville and Donald Trump are right about a lot of stuff, and they get a lot of grief that doesn't make any sense because people hate them because they're in the wrong political party or they have the wrong thoughts compared to the intellectual elites, like all these geniuses at AL.com. So just, again, their pathological silliness and hatred of the people they disagree with clouds their judgment and makes them stupid. That's what's happened here. It's all very simple to see. So thank you very much. I was able to test this and make sure that it works for the inauguration coverage we're going to do. Make sure you follow us on all these different platforms, and we'll be back here on Monday, if not before that. Thank you very much for being here.